All right, all right. What's up? What's up? What's up? So today I decided to go live and talk about the pyramid text, at least the version that I have, because of course there are multiple versions. But I want to talk about the tabs, of course. Well, these are white tabs, so you probably can't see them. Yeah, you can see them like this, but yeah, they I got some tabs on there, and I actually created a PowerPoint slide. I know I did that when I first started doing this, and I kind of stopped at it because it's kind of time consuming. But I found the happy median on this. So actually, what I did was, and this is where I say technology comes and helps out a lot. So I took some of the tabs that I already showed you on here. Oh yeah, I gotta do it this way. That and I typed it in there facts about the pyramids, right? Uh, from what I've got from this book, and I typed it in ChatGPT and I described what I wanted and stuff like that, and said, "Hey, create five, six, seven, depending on what it was, because I'm doing it for a lot of different things. Facts that comes from this book, and put it onto onto a picture for me." And it created these two, of course, for me. And this is not just based off this book here. This is information that I find that's in the happy medium of sources that I've used. The reason why I'm using James P. Allen, this version, is not for any particular reason. I'm just using it only because for the simple fact that I just grabbed it from my library. I have a lot of different books everywhere, so it was just easier for me just to grab this one. I could have used, Faulkner's or a couple of other different versions. Different people translated the pyramid text. But what I look at it as is that if you find something that's interesting, you can, go to the next source and cross reference and see what the other person says. No different than reading the Bible. Like if you pick up the New International Version and the King James Version, you'll see for yourself that there might be some words that may be, different, so on and so forth. But for the most part, you can understand both sides of the stories. So some facts about the pyramid text that I found from this book and other sources is that it's the oldest religious text in ancient Egypt, and it dates to around 2350 BC to 2150 BC. Now, that's interesting to me because I talk about the Sumerians a lot. And one of the sources that I like to use is the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. And most people know that I have brought that up so many different times to the point where it's almost exhausting, because that's like one of my favorite sources. Not because I think it's the most accurate. It's one of my favorite sources because it's the most readily available to anybody that wants to read anything about the Nuna/the Anunnaki, meaning that it's free. You don't have to go buy a book or do anything else. If you just want to spend your time reading about the Anunnaki and/slash Anuna, you can go to this website, learn how to use it correctly, and then boom, you got all the information that you pretty much need. And there's nothing wrong with my opinion on the fact that, like I said, I don't think it's accurate as the most accurate. I just feel like it's the most readily available to the people. So that way, when somebody tells you that the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru, you can go in here and look at it and find out for yourself that they don't talk about planet Nibiru in the sense as a planet being outside of extraterrestrial, meaning that it's outside of Earth's atmosphere. It's a city in Mesopotamia. And I've talked about that plenty of times before, but for some reason, some people believe that it's a planet named, there's a planet named Nibiru. And I've already gone into the details on, some people have asked me, well, when you name one of your cities from your home planet, a city from there to where you're at now. And of course, yeah, but, Nibiru/Nibiru is not the oldest city in Mesopotamia. I challenge anybody to go look up that information, because everybody that knows anything about the Sumerians and the Anuna/Anunnaki, they know what is the first and oldest city in Mesopotamia. But continuing on, you can see right here that it says it's 400 literary compositions recorded on sources which come from ancient Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, date to the late 3rd and early 2nd millennium BC. So it says right here specifically late 3rd and early 2nd millennium BC. Now, the individuals who are uh, uh, responsible for this, right, for creating this website, is these individuals right here, right? And some of those individuals are also, which I like to always bring out sources, it's the same ones for this book right here, the literature of ancient Sumer. And on the back of it, and I don't know if it's going to clear enough Yep, it clears it enough. In the back of it, it literally says the compositions in this book were mainly inscribed on clay tablets dating to the 18th century BCE. So, like I said, the individuals of the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature are the same ones of this. It's right there on the bottom. The names is on the bottom. But why I bring that up is because a lot of people say the Sumerians are considered the first civilization because of their writing system. And I always have read that it could have been the Egyptians. And there's always an argument back and forth on which one is the oldest civilization. And I can tell you that the Sumerian civilization, because I took a class from Bar Ilan University from Dr. Nili Summit. In that class, she specifically said the Sumerian civilization started because of their writing system, which was around 3200 BC. I wrote that down. I have that written down. There's a class on it. So I go off of that information for that. And then when you look at the side note of the Egyptian history, or the ancient Egyptians and the pyramids and all this stuff, seem to get their writing system starts around 3100 BC. So usually when there's an argument between them, it's usually the Sumerian civilization is at 32 and then Egyptian is at 31. Whatever anybody's argument is on that, I'm not here to argue that. I just find it interesting that when I go to the facts about the pyramid text, it says 2350 BC. Okay, so you got 18th century BCE in this book right here, and then you have another date from the actual website itself. So that's pretty interesting. For some reason, let me see, brighten this up, because some reason my thing is getting cloudy. Maybe I need to get me another camera. But the idea that these texts are around the same time gives an idea of when these gods were spoken about. So I know that the Sumerian civilization writing system started around 3200 BC because of trade. They was doing some type of trade. They had to have a writing system. They traded with the Akkadians and other individuals. So they had this trading and this writing system to go with it. Okay. Then the Akkadians took that same type of writing system and expanded on it and made it more advanced and started talking about their gods, giving stories and mythologies about their gods and so on and so forth. And a lot of people consider the Sumerian civilization the beginning of what some would consider religion, because of the idea that a lot of the monotheistic gods are a representation of one of the Anuna/Anunnaki gods, meaning that Abraham and the Abrahamic faith started around 2000 BC. So obviously he would have known who the Anuna/Anunnaki were, because you got the Babylonians, Chaldeans, and so on and so forth. So the oldest religious texts in ancient Egypt come to 2350 BC to 2150 BC. And there's representations of what I just told you about the Sumerian civilization. Another fact about it is guides to the afterlife, prayers and spells for the king's journey to the stars. There's a lot of considerations to the stars, because that's a lot of even indigenous people from around the world. They consider, and some of them, and some of those tribes and groups of people consider the stars is where some people go. They were carved inside royal pyramids found in the tombs of pharaohs from the 5th and 6th dynasties. Gods, magic, and resurrection, invoking deities and transforming into a spirit or an Ankh. And they were over 700 sacred utterances, hymns, rituals, and mortuary texts. Some more facts about the pyramid text is it was first rediscovered in 1881. Earliest text found in the Pyramid of Unas. Individual pyramid arrangements, texts are placed differently in each king's tomb. Ascending to the stars, themes about rising to the sky as a god and joining the eternal stars. Foundation of later Egyptian funerary tradition inspired later coffin text, the Book of the Dead, and other funerary literature. And what's interesting is that I have the coffin text. I'll be going over that in the future also. But the Book of the Dead is not just one book. It's a Book of the Dead for different individual persons. So everybody had a different type. You would have to basically pay for your type of Book of the Dead. So depending on how much money you had is how extravagant your Book of the Dead would be. And mostly in old Egyptian, earliest major stage of the Egyptian language. So that's pretty interesting. So like I said, this information is coming not just from this book, but from different sources, including James P. Allen Faulkner and some other individuals that I have. And I'm just sharing like I said, what I did is I just basically took what I said and said, hey, how do you understand this, Chat GPT? And can you create a picture for me that focuses on this for what I need? And this is what is my happy medium for it. And what's interesting is, like I said, every individual will have their own ideas. A lot of people will go to the text itself and say, see, this is what the text say, and don't realize that the author of the book or the translator of the book is literally telling you something, why it's the way it is in the beginning of the book. They forget the prologue and the introduction where they talk about their personal understanding and feelings about it. So a lot of misconceptions about the pyramid text is that I hear a lot of arguments in spaces, or I watch somebody's YouTube video and they'll mention certain things and they'll have a great following, a big following, and they'll say something that triggers me to go do some more research. And some of them believe that the pyramid texts themselves are you know they're not just simple spells or hymns. They are complex ritual uh, 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 corpus of utterances, meaning that everybody had their own journey to the afterlife. They didn't have the same journey. That's why everybody had their own book of the dead. Not the coffin test is where it says it's underlined. These earlier old kingdom texts were precursors to the coffin text of the middle kingdom. Well, it depends on the type of hieroglyphs that were used in their writing system. You got to remember there was an increase in making it more understanding for people. So one thing could mean one thing one way, and another one could mean another. And I get into that when I actually crack this book open. It's not a proto book of the dead, different in style, content, purpose from the later book of the dead. If you look at the book of the dead, I've actually did it already. I have my Egyptian book of the dead sitting over there. When you open it up, it's just pictures, and you got to be able to look at the pictures and translate basically what you say, what you see. It's not only Osiris focused. A lot of times when people mention the pyramid text, they talk about Osiris a lot. Osiris, 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 and they forget the different deities that are mentioned in there. And let's see, the funeral meant to protect and transform the deceased king. I've heard so many people talk about that. It's just I don't even know where to go with that, because when I go and look at the pyramid texts or curses, it depends what you consider a curse. Some people are given exactly what they want, $1,000,000, and they're rich, but they sacrifice something to have that, whether it's shorter lifespan. They may have gotten paralyzed. So, and a lot of people who are paralyzed, who are very active, that would be, almost hell for them, right? And they would have to completely adjust on that. It could be anything, what is a curse doesn't mean always, it's just however you look at what a curse is. They are secret code. A lot of people say secret codes, and that's not how it was back then. They didn't have to hide nothing back then, because if you couldn't, they only, the reading and writing were only for the elite people anyway, is for them to communicate and pass messages to their messengers to other people without them understanding what is being said, because they could just look at it and be like, well, I don't understand what this says. I don't get what this means, right? So they go on. And that's an easy way, because, kings weren't traveling, hundreds of miles to each other to have a discussion. They would send messengers and stuff like that. So to keep the messengers from knowing, if they just wanted to keep it between a group of people, the elites, that was the easiest way to do it. So writing at that time, they weren't hiding anything. It wasn't secret code. It wasn't until later on, when people started understanding, that they had to create a new secret code, and so on and so forth. And even today, when people say secret codes, a lot of it is already out there in the first place, because people have broke it down, and a lot of people have gave out information since then. So that was about it for just the basic things that I wanted to get on there about the book. I'm about to go ahead and go to the first tablet, tab that I have on there because, like I said, I keep a lot of tabs on my in my books. Hold on for a second. And what I like to do is just go back every now and then and refresh my memory. I might not read the whole book. The first 500 books that I've had, I've read at least 3 times. And now that I'm starting to understand a pattern in a lot of this stuff, I think I can just go ahead and start dumbing that down to about 1 time, 1 or 2 times. I don't have to read it 3 times or at least skim through it. And that's why it's one of the reasons why I put these tabs on here, because it's a lot of ways for when I have discussions with people or when I talk to other individuals or anything like that. It's easier for me to just go ahead and just go and say, look, hey, look, this is what the book says. Hey, when somebody's having a discussion and they're quoting the pyramid text and says, hey, the pyramid text says this, in a lot of cases you can use ChatGPT to help you out because you can give it a PDF or a file and say, hey, find what this says in there, and they'll give you all the things in there, and you can actually go in there and see what if the person was exaggerating or making up more stuff than needed, and so on and so forth. But this is where I was talking about one of the good explanations for when I was talking about the 32 and 3100 BC. So it says, covering the period from the invention of writing by 3000 BCE down to the conquest of Alexander the Great, 330 BC, the ancient Near East comprised Northeast Africa and Southwest Asia. Now, what's interesting to me is this book specifically says 3000 BC. So between this book and what I've learned from Dr. Neely Salmon about the Sumerians is 3200 BC to 3000 BC. But in reality, how do you actually accurately date that? Is it really 3200 BC, or is that the happy medium that they found that people would come to an agreement on? And is 3000 BC really a time that they dated? Or is it just a happy medium that everybody said that they could agree with, right? One person could have said 3600 BC. Another person could have said 3800 BC for either one of those two, right? And they just said, no, that doesn't make sense because of this, that, and the third. And because majority didn't agree with it, it was never 36 or 3800 BC. They decided to go with 3000 BC, or for the Sumerians, 3200 BC. So when people use dates like that, I always question, how did you specifically come up with that date? Like, that's my question right there, right? The next text says the pyramid texts were first discovered in 1880. So a lot of people say 1880. Some people say 1881. It depends on what you consider the actual time frame that these were sometimes either given to other people or so on and so forth. What's interesting is that you can go to this book here and they'll say 1880, and then you'll go somewhere else to another source and they'll say 1881 or say 1882. And the reason why is because they're depending on what they consider these texts. So this one right here says the pyramid texts were first discovered in 1880. I believe I said that on here on 1881. Yeah, see, first rediscovered in 1881. Earliest text found in the Pyramid of Unis. So yeah, let's see what it says right here. It says, yep, most of the texts of Unis, Tetai, Pepai, and so on and so forth. It has different ones. So yeah, it just depends on, who had the first argument. But I'm definitely going to double check that right after this, just to make sure, because I want to know why. I want to say it was Faulkner or somebody else, a different book that I've read that had 1881 on there. So we'll just go with the idea that right here, according to this book right here, it says pyramid text 1881 or 1880. And the next one says, and an English translation of the pyramid text was published by Samuel B. Mercer in 1952, based on City's edition, another of Eunice texts alone by Alexander Piankoff in 1968. And then it says, and a third by Raymond O. Faulkner in 1969, incorporating the text of Pepe II and Neith, published by Jacor. Now, I can't say this. I just thought about this. There was a couple. So me being an author, I know that if you make a mistake in the text, it could be inside. It could be digitally, but and people can have copies of it and so on and so forth. But if the information was fixed later on, the new copies can be printed. So that's actually interesting because that's something that I learned while publishing my book. Let's see. Uh, I want to make sure something because I also use sacred-text.com, and that website is a good website that I use a lot of. See, so here we go. So this one, let's see what this source is. See, this one says 1881. Let's see where this source comes from, because this is why it's important that dates matter to me. And let's see. Hold on. This is interesting to me because you have different dates and different sources in different places. So this, yeah. So this one just says the 19th century by French archaeologist Gaston Maspero. So, that's why it's always good to double check. I see one for Wikipedia, which you can't always trust Wikipedia for accuracy because it does say 1881. But let's see why. Why does it say 1881? Let's see why it says 1881. Let's see, because it does say, I'm clicking on it right now. It says Wikipedia, and then it gives you different. And so it gives you the legacy of pyramid text, a historical overview, the pyramid text, world history, Edu, and the pyramid texts are the oldest ancient Egyptian. So those are the different links that they give for actually when they were discovered. So that it says, here we go. It says the source for this one is number 10, Verna James Allen James P. So it says so here, let me bring this up because this is actually interesting. This is what I mean about how I try to verify. So it actually says on Wikipedia, James P. Allen, a new concordance of the pyramid text. So maybe that's a new information right there. I don't know. This is where it told me to go to. It says right here. And then you got the pyramid text, the mystery, culture, and signs of Egypt's great monuments in New York Grove. So that's where the source comes from for 1881. Yeah, see? Okay, see? This is crazy because this is actually the this is actually what I have on my Kindle. That's why I said I have different versions on there. So yeah, this is actually the one that says 1881. So that's why I like, for me personally, as a person who likes to do their due diligence, I always try to give the happy medium on what information says what. So as you can see right there, one would say 1881, this one would say 1880, and they damn near use the same exact source, but it's just like, okay, so where do you get this information from, and how are you saying one over the other? Because I think if we're not even that far from 1880, 1881 right now, and there's different sources saying 1880 and 1881, you can see how that can be a misconception if it goes thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So going to 3200 BC, between 3200 BC and 3000 BC, just think about how inaccurate that information would be. So the pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom are described mostly in vertical columns on the interior walls of each pyramid. They are divided into spells units of varying length from a few words to several hundred, each usually preceded by a monogram for the direction of DDMDW resuscitation, and marked at the end by a sign taken from the hieroglyph. So this is interesting because when people hear spells, they also hear curse. So that's why you get the idea of curses and stuff like that. All right. The next tab. The ancient Egyptians believed that each human being consists of three basic parts: the physical body,
and two non-material elements known as the Ka and the Ba. The Ka is an individual's life force, the element that makes the difference between a living body and a dead one. Each person's Ka ultimately came from the Creator and returned to the gods at death. The Ba is comparable to the Western notion of the soul or personality, the feature that makes each person a unique individual apart from the physical element of the body. And that's interesting to me because I've read so much about the Ba and the Ka, and sometimes I can read either one could be the soul, just depending on context. So just for that, just for me, is that's just interesting. All right, let's see. The next tab, it says the sky was seen as the surface of the cosmic ocean where it met the atmosphere, and the sun's daily journey through the sky therefore required a boat known as the day boat. Now that's what's interesting to me. I always talk about how the Sumerians always say that their Anuna slash Anunnaki came from the depths of the sea, and that uh, instead of from a planet outside of Earth's atmosphere. And just what I read here, and I'll read it again. The sky was seen as the surface of the cosmic ocean where it met the atmosphere, and the sun's daily journey through the sky therefore required a boat known as the day boat. Day boat. The sun's apparent path across the sky throughout the year follows a 12-degree wide arc from east to west, known as the ecliptic. The Egyptians saw this as a distinct feature of the sky, which they called the winding canal. Now, that's where a lot of people talk about the idea that, their journey through the sky. That's why in the Book of the Dead or something like that, it's the cosmic ocean and so on and so forth. There's all this information. But it says cosmic ocean, and then it specifically calls it a day boat. And they describe it as the atmosphere. So they're telling you exactly where this location is at and where this is happening at. So there's no confusion on that at all. The pyramid text of Unisys, it says the corpus of pyramid text inscribed in the pyramid of Unis or Unis, last king of the fifth dynasty, 2353, 2323, is the oldest, smallest, and best preserved of the old kingdom sources. It was also the first to be discovered and published in modern times, and its texts have received more scholarly attention than those of the sources. I wish when they say stuff like this and when they find it, they give you a time date stamp on when they this stuff, because like I said, with the 1880 and 1881 thing, I can just imagine if one source says one thing and another source says another, what's the happy medium? How do we know the truth? Well, the only way we know the truth is if we go to the actual records that they have and see it for ourselves. Here we go. It says this was on page 47 of this book, Unis or Unis, spells for passing through the Akhet, anti-chamber, west-south walls. And I don't know why, but this okay, yeah, I just read it real quick. So this is what I tabbed up here. It says, you apes who sever heads, I pass by you in peace, for I have tied my head on my neck, and my neck is on my torso, in my identity of head tier, in which I tiered the head of the Apis on him on the day of lassoing the longhorned bull. Now, this is just a spell, and it's just part of the pyramid text. I'm not going to read all that stuff. That I just highly recommend getting this book. I just want to get you an idea of what is actually saying in these texts, and the idea. The pyramid text of Titai, the pyramid of Titai, first king of the sixth dynasty, 2323 to 2291, is similar in size to the Unis, but its pyramid texts are more extensive and less well preserved. 6 of the 14 inscribed walls in its substructure have been destroyed, These include the north and south walls of the burial chamber and the antechamber, and the walls of the entrance corridor, all of which now exist mostly as disjointed fragments. The fragments have been recovered by a series of French expeditions in the last century, but remain mostly unpublished. As a result, the order and the content of the spells that were once inscribed on the destroyed walls can no longer be fully understood. So that was part of that one. Um, the next tab, let's see. I always tell people, if you want to know about the ancient Egyptian myths and their gods and what they said and possibly what they said and stuff like that, there are three major types of books that I highly recommend. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, the one where it says the complete papyrus Ani, Ani. That's the one that I have. I already went over that one already. And then the coffin text, I highly recommend that because that gives you the basics. And of course, you have to read different versions and stuff like that. But for the most part, um, it's like I said, it's like reading the King James version and reading the New International Version. Then you have the pyramid text, which I'm going over now. And this is, I mean, it tells you without the pictures and stuff in this book, at least, what it actually says, right? So the idea of what the information says, you only really need those three things. I mean, if you're trying to see what somebody else says and what they understood or what they translating or comprehending or whatever the case may be, then I recommend going to read different versions of it. But I mean, you should do that anyway. You should, if you're going to read James P. Allen, see what Faulkner said and then see what this other person said and so on and so forth, and see what some people might have left out. You won't get the full thing. I don't even think you can put this into a book that's only like a couple of hundred pages. How many pages is this book? Like 300. They say a lot of this stuff they pick and choose what to put in and what to put out anyway. So the next tab that I have, I just closed it when I was looking at the pages, is basically from the glossary. I didn't really go over what the pyramids text say. I really just want you guys to understand that if you're going to talk about it, at least go and get this version or any other version, right? But the beetle, most people know the beetle is is the name for the sun at dawn, derived from association of the word HPRR, beetle, with the verb HPR coming to being, evolved. A belligerent face in this glossary means an epithet of the sun. So that's pretty interesting. And then the Ben, most people know what the Ben was. The Ben was a pyramid-shaped mound symbolizing the first land that appeared from new at the creation. Its compound was the solar temple in Heliopolis, or a part of it. In his first raising above this mound, the sun was envisioned as a bird, conventionally translated as the phoenix. The black land was a term for cultivable soil along the banks of the Nile and in the delta where most of Egypt's population lived, hence a name for Egypt itself. Let's see. Here, let me read the Ba. It says right here in the glossary, the Ba, the non-physical essence of an individual or thing, the impression made on an observer, akin to the modern notion of personality or soul. The verb became ba, be, ba, and the plural name bas involved the quality of impressiveness. The singular noun denotes a mode of existence. The ba of the living survives after the body dies, and in the respect is similar to the modern concept of the soul. The bas of a town are the deities associated with it. All right, so the next tab is battlefield, a site of mythological battle of Horus and Seth in the south of modern Cairo. See the next tab. They're in white, so I got to be careful. That was kind of a bad idea. Now that I see that, but here we go. The next tab is right here. It's stuck. There we go. Is the Ogdoad, is a group of four gods and their female counterparts, representing qualities of the universal ocean. Okay, these are where these gods come from, the universal ocean. So wherever that could be. In the middle kingdom, the gods are infinity, watery, dark, and lost, undefinable. The last layer replaced by hidden, Amon. In the pyramid text, Amun and the lost one may represent members of the group, the Ogdoads. Theological center was Hermopolis, whose chief god Thoth was also its lord. Its lord in quotation marks, Lord. Lord also means what? Well, a lot of people already know, Baal. That's all I got to say. But this was basically what I went to. It was quick, simple. I just want to let people know that I do have the pyramid text. So and I have different versions of it also, because I have some on my Kindle that I have right here too. So when we have discussions of the pyramid text and you bring things up, I can simply search it and look for it very easily here. Easier on my Kindle than I can in here. Reason why is because on your Kindle, you can type in whatever somebody's saying and the words that they're using, and you can search it, and boom, it'll bring up whether they said the right thing and quoted it correctly or misplaced it in narrative and created a whole new narrative. So when I have discussions about the pyramid text, I pull out this source, the pyramid source. I showed you how different places have 18 different dates, and the reason why I brought that up was because it's important that if we can get small things like that incorrect, and we're not that far ahead of time from that time frame, then it's obvious that that can happen, you know, in the sense of just thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So what we consider a civilization, it all depends on a lot of people, what you consider a civilization. There's different dates for a civilization. There's different theories, there's different quotes, and so on and so forth. But right now, between the Egyptians and the Sumerians, considering what a civilization is, me personally, I think that me personally, I think they could have probably just started at the same time. I mean, how do we get 3200 BC, not like 3203 or 3215 or 3281, right? And how do we get 3000 BC without, is it 3001, 3002, 3003? You know what I'm saying? They getting very specific, saying, well, not very specific, but very to the point where it's just there's not a date. Right now, we're in 2025, right? We know when the internet first started, right? It's according to, as far as when it really got down to the bulk of, the rest of the world getting it. We know that the internet was used for one thing at one time, then it slowly came into being usage in our lives and stuff like that. So I just want to say I highly recommend getting this book. It's a good book to read. I'll be doing the coffin text in the future. I also want to say this, what I share just comes straight from the books. I don't care about opinions and all that other stuff. I can give you my opinion, but it'll be long and it'll be very detailed. But I go to my ancient texts, these books, and I just read what these people say. I don't care about being right or wrong, and the reason why is because nobody can tell me right or wrong from what they say. I know a lot of people will harp on what I said about there's not a planet Nibiru, and I will always say this: if there is a planet Nibiru, I've already went over this in one of my old videos about Zachariah Sitchin and his book, so you can definitely find it in that video. It's all on one of all his books where I mentioned actually when he says the last time they were here, and I typed in the chat GPT and asked if that's the last time they will be here, then that means the next time will be easily calculated. And it's definitely in one of his books. But I can tell you that
Just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true. You got to cross reference. And in most cases, if you really want to get to the bottom of it, you got to learn the language for yourself. You can't just sit here and say, oh, this person said that, because, yeah, I'm going off of what James P. Allen said. I'm also going off of what Faulkner said and what other individuals said. But if I really want to know it for myself, then I got to learn the language for myself. And I have a book that's a beginner's book on learning hieroglyphs. And I will be going over that in the future because I'm teaching myself ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, so I can read the text for myself and understand the actual writing is for myself. Is It's very complex, and some of it you can, do it your way, and there's other ways you can use technology to help you out. There's so many different ways, but I do have the ancient Egyptian pyramid text. That's the one that I have, the second edition, and I'll be doing another book. I might go live again sometime this week because I'm going to do one on my article on my website. But let me go ahead and promote it because I barely even promote it. I need to start promoting it. I am a bestseller, Journey Through the Origins of History. You can find right here on Amazon. I'm definitely, you'll get a lot of great information in here. I talk about all kinds of different things in here. I talk about the ancient Hebrew. I talk about, the stars. I talk about the Big Bang, the Anunnaki/Anunnaki, the Egyptians, the Mesoamericans, the creation of humans. I talk about it and I give actual sources that I've always been doing since, I've been going live. This is exactly what I do all the time. I just give sources. I take books like this one right here and I can cross-reference them and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that what I share literally just comes from what somebody else has shared plenty of other times, and not in the sense of taking credit from them, but just saying, hey, look, this is what is actually said. Because a lot of times when people have discussions, like I said, when they talk about the pyramid text, they say the pyramid text says this. First question that comes to my mind is, because I want to read it for myself, is, hey, can you tell me which version that you have and what the author it is? And they'll say me, why does that matter? Well, it matters to me because I want to read what version you have versus what I have, and I can cross-reference and see where maybe the confusion comes from. And a lot of people can't provide that because I already know that they're only saying what they've seen in a YouTube video or in a documentary instead of buying the book. So these, like I said, if you want basic understandings of the ancient Egyptian culture, religion, mythologies, and so on and so forth, the pyramid text is what you want to get. It doesn't matter what's well, it does matter whose source you get it from, because some people can be incorrect, of course. But I promoted James P. Allen, and you can do your due diligence on who might have been better than him or worse than him, and go from there. Then you can get the coffin text. That's another one. And then get you any version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and you'll just be able to see where these stories come from and what everybody's opinions on it and stuff like that. And in some cases, you can buy a couple of other books. I have a book, I think it's from Richard Wilkinson, The Complete Gods and Goddesses of Egypt, and it's basically a whole book about the Egyptian gods and goddesses of Egypt. And you can see, how to cross-reference with that stuff. And I believe I already did a video on that. If I haven't, I'll be doing it in the future. But just get down to the bottom of figuring out what the actual text says. So if you have a conversation and somebody says something about the pyramid text and they're just saying something and you're not too sure about it, at least get the book and read it for yourself. I mean, a lot of this stuff is available online for free, different versions. Like I said, I like to use sacred-text.com, and you can find a lot of these ancient texts, ancient books, and these ancient mythology sources and all kinds of stuff in that just that website by itself. I mean, hell, I'm telling you, a lot of my books on my Kindle come from that website, that and archive.gov. Actually, I don't think you can actually download any books from that website. You can only read it from there. But I'll go see if I can find it on archive.gov, and 9 times out of 10, it's right on there. I believe it's archive.gov or something like that, one of the free books where you get all the free books, places where you get free books and stuff. And I just get the PDF from there, throw it on there, and start reading it from there. So I really appreciate everybody coming in and listening. This is something that I really enjoy. I have a passion for, and all I care about is just giving the sources of what's been said. If anybody wants to have a conversation with me on the pyramid text, I can go in more in depth on it
especially what it says and what it doesn't say and stuff like that. I just like to provide that, hey, these are some of the things that I found interesting in this book. So, like I always say, knowledge is power. And next time, y'all, I see y'all. Y'all have a good day. Appreciate it.